Okay, so here's how I would get out of jury duty. Because searching how to get off of jury duty doesn't always cut it. What you'll actually find is a bunch of lawyers telling you what they're allowed to say, because they all have a license to protect. And so for this adventure, the best path is to go to the worst source. A convicted former correctional officer who sat through a long trial. And here's one timeless method that is a surefire way to get off of jury duty. And as I sit here now, I wish the jury who convicted me of second-degree murder would have used the methods that I'm going to explain today. 2 steps, right? You find out what the criteria is for being a juror, and then you do the exact opposite. And it's that simple. And now you can just, go on and get off of jury duty. But if you stick around, I promise your chances of getting off will increase by at least a little. That I can promise you. Because it's not knowing what to do that'll get you off of jury duty. It's actually more like the why and the how the methods work. And then once you understand that, no ethical practitioner of law would want you anywhere near their caseload. And so I'm your boy Jereh Gold, your stigma Sherpa. And I've been told by many people that I am the biggest piece of shit that you'll ever meet, right? And I hate that title, but in the other videos, I explained that I hate the silence and the isolation even more, and that I'm addicted to being useful, and that being a shitbird survivalist is how I made it through prison as an ex-officer. And I keep saying and I make myself available to people who want to explore the mountain of deserved hate. And I sell insights, convenience, and time. And I'll always post my resume of public failure, and that'll be on full display. A little history, I'm a Marine reservist with an OTH discharge. I'm a shit can Santa Clara County Sheriff's Correctional Deputy that served under Lori Smith. And so I was convicted of a 2017 on-duty murder, which was ultimately overturned in 2022. But then I pled guilty to a voluntary manslaughter. And, in the name of cowardice and convenience, I pled guilty because I didn't want to go through another trial. And then I was released in 2025, late December, and here I am. And I do want to make it known that I'm not a self-deprecator, and I'm not exposing myself as a defense mechanism to shield criticism. And I can assume I know what's coming, but the only thing that I feel that is worth controlling is what I put out, right? So in this video today, I'm going to teach you how to get the hell off of jury duty. Because if you don't want to be there, which is, obviously because you don't, then you shouldn't be, right? So before we begin, I'm not a lawyer. And as I said, I am a convicted felon who sat through my own trial. And this is my personal experience and observations. And it's not legal advice. So do what you want with this information. I'm not telling you what to say. This is what I would say. So it's right. Also, your situation is different. And if you need legal guidance, find a professional and hire them to tell you shit that they're not supposed to. And don't blame me for your choices, because I'm just telling you what I saw and what I wish my jurors knew, okay? So for whatever reason, if a person is unwilling to speak, if they're only unwilling to speak up for what they want, which is to get off of jury duty, like at that point in the trial process where there are no stakes involved and no stakes involved on their end, imagine sitting through deliberations and someone's life is in their hands, yet they have a contrarian position and they are not convinced of the guilt. I bet that person would just go with the flow and do whatever the group wants to do, right? And so that means that juror doesn't stand a chance, and that defendant doesn't stand a chance, or the state, or whatever. And that juror is going to cave every single time. So what I believe, you need to get the fuck out if you want the fuck out. Plain and simple. Like, get off of jury duty. Because if you can't advocate for yourself when it's easy at this point in the stage, you will not do it when it matters. And that's dangerous for everyone, especially for the defendant whose life depends on 12 people and the alternates. But that ain't you. You're over here saying that civil duty is for someone else and it ain't gonna be me, which is good because you're honest, and that's okay, because it has to be okay. I know one thing for sure: unwilling jurors hurt everyone. And here's the truth: the courts cannot prove what's in your mind, and they can't tell if you're lying about your bias. It is literally impossible. And they can't prove your mindset unless you snitch yourself out. And if you think they have some kind of mind reading machine or a bias detector or some kind of polygraph test that can tell if you're lying, it's bullshit, because there's a reason why a polygraph detector is not admissible in court. All they have to act on is what you say, and that's it. So when you tell them, I don't think I can be impartial, they have to take you at your word. Because the alternative is basically forcing someone who claims that they're biased to serve on a jury. And then no lawyer wants that liability, because that's how cases get overturned on appeal. And that's the exploit. That's why this method works. And they can't call your bluff without risking the entire trial. The Sixth Amendment gives a defendant the right to an impartial jury, and that's the requirement. So let's examine what impartial even means, because that right there is your way out. An impartial juror is someone who can judge the facts without bias. But the thing is, everyone has bias. And I'll die on that hill, because there's no other way. And I remember during my trial, the judge gave a clear and direct order for the jury to not engage or fuck with social media. And don't talk to no one, don't read the news, or don't watch the news in regards to this case. And the jurors, have to be able to follow jury instructions without injecting their own bias into it. And then they need to render a verdict based solely on evidence and law, not feelings, not hunches, and not what they think happened. They're not allowed to do that. But how on earth can you convict someone based off of circumstantial evidence and not fill in the gaps? See, so you can't technically do that. I mean, yeah, you can, but you just have to take the lawyer's word, and you're not qualified. And here's the beautiful part, though: you get to assess your own bias. You could be honest and say, I hate Filipinos, or whatever race that you want to put in. I know what I would say, right? But the judiciary, or the judicial process, there's like this whole selection process, and they literally tell you what disqualifies you. It's called voir dire or whatever, but in practice, it's like theater. It's like almost comedy, because I remember I saw the looks on people's faces, and they looked more terrified because their asses were gonna sit there for $15 a day. and lawyers on both sides ask questions to figure out who to keep and who to kick. And this is where most people mess up, because they try to hide their bias. And they think that if they seem too opinionated, they'll dismiss me. But it's like, yo, that's like the goal. And so the person tries to play neutral. And that right there is wrong. That's how you get stuck in jury duty. What you have to do is let your wildest truths out. Like all the pattern recognizers and the statistical enthusiasts, y'all know what to say. Don't hide your bias. You showcase it with full transparency. You tell the absolute truth. You make it so obvious with your truth, because we can't lie. That's illegal. So you just get wild with your words. It's so wild that like both sides look at you and go, yeah, man, we can't use this person. Because what people don't understand, the lawyers aren't trying to find perfect jurors. Oh, that's what I think. But they're looking for jurors that would benefit both sides. And they're trying to eliminate the ones who would absolutely fuck their case. And if you're a liability to both sides of the case, bam, you're gone. And this is where it gets interesting, because the system claims to want impartial jurors, but what they actually want, like I said, I think, are people who will follow the script. And if I were a prosecutor, this is what my wish list would be. Don't ask too many questions, and don't challenge jury instructions. And you absorb the law as I, the prosecutor, presented it, and just trust me, because I work for the people and the state. But if I were a defense attorney, this is what I would want. I would say, I would tell this to the jurors, put yourself in my client's shoes, you privileged, clean slate, empathetic person, right? And if my client was white, then it's like, please be white. And if my client was black, please don't be white. And if my client was an immigrant, please be a white female liberal. And to scrutinize the law that the prosecutor presented, and then just take my word for it. Okay? And if there's a document or a packet that you have to fill out, that right there is your time to shine. It's called like a supplemental questionnaire. And here is where you can be very honest about your bias. And the thing is, remember, everyone has a bias. The question is whether you're willing to admit them. And most people won't. They'll say, I can be fair, when they know damn well that they can't. But you're gonna be the most self-aware person in that courtroom. Yep. And this is where people waste their time. It's when they claim financial hardship without proof. They'll say, Your Honor, I can't afford to miss work. But then that's just a cool story, because the California Code of Civil Procedure, whatever that number is, says no eligible person shall be exempt from service or something as trial by juror by reason of occupation or economic status or demographics or whatever, something like that, right? And you can't just say it, you have to actually show it. But then I've seen rich people get off because they had an expensive cruise that was scheduled last year, and it's conveniently happening during the trial, and then they get off, right? But then you have a person who's a single mother who's living paycheck to paycheck, who will be forced to live off $15 a day to fulfill her civic duty, right? The court doesn't care about your inconvenience, because they'll basically tell you, you adjust your schedule and figure it out, because your job must adhere to the powers of the courts. So unless your hardship is catastrophic, which it probably isn't, like you're the sole, caretaker of a dying parent, they're not gonna dismiss you for financial reasons, which is why I don't recommend being honest with that route, right? This is where most people could get dismissed if they just knew how to articulate their bias. Like, the voir dire process is designed to weed people out who can't be impartial. So when they ask, can you be fair and impartial? Your answer shouldn't be, no. Your answer should be, I don't think so, and here's why. Or you can actually say why. You can actually say, why do I have to be fair? Because your system isn't fair, and you guys are all corrupt, and I watch the news 24/7, and then you lay out your bias in a way that makes both sides uncomfortable. And because if the prosecution thinks your side, you'll side with the defense, or if the prosecution thinks you'll side with the defense, then you're a wild card, and then as a wild card, you'll get dismissed. So an example would be, like, if this was a drug case, you can say, I believe the war on drugs is a failure and drug possession should be decriminalized. And then you throw race into the mix, and then you say, I don't think I can fairly evaluate this case under current law because the dude's black. Then boom, the defense loves you, but the prosecution hates you, and so you're out. And like, if you had, another example would be like a police misconduct case. Like, if you say, I have family in law enforcement and cops don't lie, I don't think I can be impartial. There you go. The prosecution loves you, and then the defense hates you, and then you're out. But if you really, really want to guarantee dismissal, wear a shirt with a political affiliation, like Proud Boys or Black Lives Matters or something like that, that's just so one-sided, and then they'll be like, oh no. But like, every time, I hear people talk about this whole, jury nullification, like just mentioning it. That's like the magic word that's gonna get you out of jury duty. But I've never seen or heard anyone talk about that like in prison, and no one, so I don't know. But if a lawyer asks, can you convict if you have the facts, and then you say, no, I believe in jury nullification. I mean, I guess it's chaos and they probably will want you off, but I mean, I've never seen that. But here's like the key thing that you have to sell. Like, you can't just say, I have a bias in like a monotone or a flat, like just unconvincing way, and then expect to get dismissed. You have to make them believe that you're genuinely conflicted. And that means eye contact, there's conviction, you have discomfort, and then you got to show that you're not being fake. You have to be authentically biased. And the more genuine you are, the more likely they're going to take you out and they're going to let you go. And I would say, do not try to be clever. Don't like try to game the system in obvious ways, right? So like, I remember people say, oh, I hate cops. And they say, oh, I think all defendants are guilty. And it's like, it's too extreme. And like, there's a good chance that it's performative and that they'll see right through it. And then what's worse is the judge can actually hold you in contempt for wasting the court's time. So your bias needs to be real, or at least rooted in something real. And if you're making it up, it'll show. And timing actually matters too, because you don't just drop your bias bomb in the first 5 minutes. I would say you let the process unfold a little bit. You answer a few neutral questions. Then when they ask you the big one about being, if you can be fair and impartial, that's when you hit them with it. You know, or you could be like, it depends if traffic doesn't piss me off, or the news, or if you just, you know, start ranting how you hate the government, which seems like a trend that the government is putting up with. But if you come out swinging too early, there's a chance that it might look rehearsed. So you would want to wait for the right moment, so it looks like genuine self-reflection. And then sometimes the judge might push back, and he'll with his robe and his authority, he will ask you, are you sure you can't set aside your bias? And then you can say, Your Honor, I genuinely thought about it, and I don't think I can. Or you could say, I wish I could, but I don't believe I'd be able to set it aside completely, right? So if you notice the framing, you're not saying you won't be fair, you're saying you 100% can't. And if you're framing it as a concern for the trial's integrity and not your own convenience, like with that type of response, you're giving the defense ammunition if there's ever an appeal, right? So they can say, like, the juror expressed doubt about impartiality, but was seated anyway, then boom, right? And then that makes it harder for them to argue with you, and it protects the trial outcome, because that's what they want to do. Also, one more thing, don't volunteer information that they didn't ask for, okay? So you answer the question that they asked, and then nothing more. And if they ask, have you ever been arrested? And you have been, answer honestly. But don't elaborate unless they ask, because they're looking for you to slip. And so, like, the whole goal is transparency without oversharing, because oversharing makes you look like you're trying too hard to get dismissed. Because imagine if you're the defendant and your entire future is in the hand of 12 strangers, and one of those strangers really doesn't want to be there. And they're pissed, and they're distracted, and they're just trying to get back to their life. Do you think that that person is going to give you a fair shot? No. They're going to rush through the deliberation, and they're just going to go with the majority just to get it over with. So that's when you start asking weird questions like, can I blog about this? Or how soon can I blog about this? And then if there are notes that you write, you can ask, am I allowed to keep it? Or if you can take pictures of the notes. Or if you are allowed to talk to your therapist about the traumatic details of the case without revealing names, right? Or you can say, what if I accidentally view stuff about this case in the news? Or you can ask, am I allowed to secure contracts with the media, but I promise not to talk about it until the case is over? Hey, you could ask that crazy ass question. Or you could say, are there laws preventing me from profiting off this case? And then do I have to share the profits with the victims or the defendants? You see, that's why I'm teaching you this, because I am not some civil liberties warrior, right? I really believe unwilling jurors are dangerous, and they don't pay attention, and they don't ask questions, and they don't push back on bad arguments. And that means innocent people get convicted or guilty people walk. So if you don't want to be there, you need to get the fuck out. Like, don't half-ass it. Don't sit there resentful. Just leave. Do whatever it takes. Because this whole video it's not about gaming the system. It's about self-awareness. And if you know you can't be impartial in a trial, that is your true civic duty. And to say it. Because if you know your own bias will interfere, you own it. Because pretending you can be fair when you can't is worse than just admitting your bias. And the system knows this, and that's why voir dire exists. So use it, and getting off of jury duty isn't about being lazy or being unpatriotic. It's about recognizing when you're not the right person for the job. And if you're honest about that, the system will let you go. Because at the end of the day, they don't want you there if you don't want to be there. So make it easy for everybody and for yourself. And just be honest and be direct and get the fuck out.